What about dealing with some of the sort of more negative aspects of being a teenager that we've touched on? How can we perhaps negate that negativity in the classroom?
I think that, and I think this applies to people of all ages and in all situations, if we can understand, if each individual and the people around them can understand as much as possible about the psychology and the neuroscience, but the psychology mostly, of why a person at any age or stage or in any situation may behave and feel the way they are behaving and feel. If we can understand the psychology behind it and recognise it as a real experience, then we can start to get better control. So anyone going through anything and behaving in a certain way and having certain negative behaviours, let's say, if they can be helped to understand why those behaviours are happening, then that gives them a really good starting point to be able to take back control for themselves. And that applies both to the person going through the experience and to the person helping them go through it. The more we can understand how things work, including the human brain and human behaviour. when I was a child, I was fascinated by how things work. I still am. I take things to pieces and try and put them back together again. And the human brain is just a machine. It's just a very, very super complicated one. Mm. We don't know everything about it. There's a lot we don't know about it, but we know much more than we did when I was a teenager. And so we need to take that knowledge and use it and share it. I don't think it's enough or right for only teachers and parents to understand how the teenage brain works and what the influences are on them and why they behave and feel the way they do. I think teenagers need to understand that as well. And then there's a great opportunity for us to share that with them and give them that knowledge, rather than just do what we would do if they were much younger, which is to do it all for them. It's, as I say, adolescence is about becoming independent, and so we have to give them the tools to start to have active agency and be in charge of their own lives as much as possible.
Brilliant. So what are your top tips then for teaching teens? If you had, say, 2 or 3 top tips that you could give.
I think that it's really important for teachers to understand the teenage brain, but also to understand how stress impacts performance. We know from our own lives that when we're under stress, we don't do so well at the tasks we're trying to do. We make mistakes, we forget things, we're more snappy. That's a common result of things that are stressful happening in our lives and our minds. And so if teachers realise that this is what is going on in the minds of the learning brains in front of them, the learning brains in their classroom, then they'll have greater sympathy, greater understanding, and also have greater potential for being able to affect that change. I think also I would recommend that teachers become very understanding of the personality trait of introversion, because it's very much in schools nowadays. It's not exactly the same in all countries in the world, but there is a drive towards being extrovert, behaving in an extrovert way. So there's a drive towards collaborative working and sharing your what you've been doing, sharing your work in front of the class, standing up in front of the class, answering questions out loud. There's a real emphasis on all of that. And those things are important things, but they are very, very difficult and mentally exhausting for people who are more introvert. And so I think teachers need to get more information about how best to provide this collaborative environment, but provide it in a way which is manageable and helpful for introverts as well.
I guess that connects to your previous points, where if teenagers are under stress, they're not going to perform well. And of course, if you put an introvert in a position where they have to perform, they're going to feel stressed.
Yeah. Exactly. And also I think it would be really good if teachers and indeed parents could mentally put themselves in the shoes of a learner, because as adults we tend not to do that. We tend to avoid things where we don't know what's going on, or we're a beginner. We don't like things where we're not going to be the best or be good at something. We don't like starting new things, and that's what teenagers have to do all the time. Teenagers have to be learners with a teacher telling them what to do all the time, and that's difficult. And teachers, I think, need to remember what that's like. Try to mentally access what it was like for them as learners, and to think about things like, little examples that will happen over and over again to a teenager at school, of being asked a question where you don't know the answer, or being told something in a lesson and you're not quite understanding it, or you're finding it difficult, and so you're trying to work it out. Meanwhile, the teacher is talking about something else, and you're still trying to work out that thing from a minute ago, and then the teacher asks a question, but you didn't hear it because you're still trying to work that thing out. Then the young person gets into trouble because they weren't listening, but actually they might well have been really trying to work something out. So I think we as adults, we've forgotten what it's like to be the learner, to be dominated by the teacher telling you what to do. Adults are able to say, I'm really sorry, I didn't hear that, could you say that again? Or, I'm really sorry, I'm not feeling very well, or something difficult is going on in my life, I'm not concentrating well today. Adults can say that, and teenagers usually can't say that. So we need to be a bit more sympathetic and understanding, and then we will get more out of. I'm not talking about letting teenagers get away with everything. I'm talking about finding ways as a teacher to get the best out of your students. And you will do that best by understanding what might be going on in their mind at that moment, and understanding the learning process and how stress impacts on that.
Thank you. Well, I feel we've barely scratched the surface of all the interesting science and that's going on out there. So Nicola's going to be writing some blogs for us about more to do with the teenage brain and how that impacts learning in the teenage classroom. But where else can we find information about this?
So on my website, which is nicolamorgan.com, there's masses of free information, all split into, it's a new website, and it will split into nicely constructed and well organised sections. So you can find information about what stress does, and teenage brain, the reading brain, which is a big topic of mine, and the effects of life online and the whole digital screen-based world that we all live in.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.